Just say I do.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of weddings and events. I'm your host, Keith Willard. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about making sure they are before you say I do. And when we get caught up in the pomp and circumstance, a lot of times the obvious things that come up that go, oh, wait, maybe this is not the right person for me, get kind of sugar-coated because you're planning and you think, oh, it's just the stress of the planning. And, oh, things will be different after we get married. But will they? So our guest today is Bethany Barton. She is a freelance writer out of LA, but also a relationship expert and has written several books, but especially as I say it, sometimes I forget, couples forget the reason of it. Oh my God, I just totally lost my brain. So let me bring on Marcy Gutenberg, who is my co-host and my brain.
Hello.
Wow. I just completely, you gotta love things that are live.
we are thick in season, and it's like the meetings and the putting everything together is just like overload at this point. I know.
Love it. This is we're about to go into our fourth season. Holy moly!
Yes.
I know.
Which is crazy. I mean, I can't even believe it's been that long. Wow.
I really can't either. And and by the way, it's apologies I never got. So now I have to apologize. So let's bring her on. Bethany, welcome to the show. I apologize.
Hi, Bethany.
Thank you. Hi.
So we're excited about having you on the show because this is one of those areas that is tricky, right? When you get into the planning stages of a wedding, typically people assume that you're with the person that you're supposed to be with. Right? You said yes, okay, I'll marry you, and now you're about to say I do, but sometimes they're not the right person. And sometimes you're like, wait, hold on. Wait, what? So, tell us first of all a little bit about how you even came up with Apologies I Never Got. Where did that all start?
Yeah, well, it kind of initially started as a joke among friends where we would just go on these horrible dates and joke like, oh, that's an apology I'll never get. And then I really started to connect to kind of the deeper aspect of it there's so many apologies we get. And we really let those hold us back from, good relationships or our futures or the life that we really want to live.
Right.
We'll say things like, oh, well, my ex cheated on me, so now I'm just suspicious of everyone, or things like that. And really what we can do is write our own apologies for the ones that we never got and let those things go.
Oh, smart.
So like forgiving yourself so that you can move
yourself, forgiving them, even if they're not apologizing, but just kind of understanding, the deeper meaning of we all make mistakes. We all, given the right circumstances, can do a vast array of it is, and just kind of understanding that there's no reason to let that haunt us in our future relationships.
Well, and I think that when we get into the process of planning a wedding, we do sugarcoat some of those things that we kind of go, wait, we're still human beings, and you still need to treat me like a human being and treat me like somebody that you love and respect. And just because we're getting married doesn't mean that you get a blank check on treating me like crap. Right? That doesn't mean like you're stuck with me. It means that we're still walking together towards this end result. So what are some big moments that you think that if you're going towards the I do moment, big moments that you go, wait, let me think about that? Because is it as simple as he no longer opens the door for me on the car? Or is it more deep than that?
I think it can really be such a range, right? And sometimes those little things are actually really representative of the bigger. So something like that could be more representative of a lack of general respect or thinking of someone's feelings. But really, it's kind of just about getting honest with yourself of what you can really live with or without for the rest of your life. Because I think that's a little bit where people get into with the wedding planning and the excitement, and they're really capable of kind of being like, oh, I don't need to go camping ever again. It's not that important to me. But you're talking about for the rest of your life. So all
Right.
these little things are bothering you now. This is the rest of your life. Are you okay with that? Or does that need to change before you say, or is it kind of past the point of really have to get very honest with themselves, which is very hard when you're very excited or, feel like maybe you found the right match. Glaze become really big issues later down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart to say that, because we do, once we've been in relationships for a really long time, I've been with my partner for now 19 years, and there are some things that have been, little bits and pieces along the way. And that, I feel, is just because relationships, you become more like each other. It's kind of like your pet. You start looking like your dog. Well, you start looking more and more like each other. And so I think that this is very similar to that, is that, it's little instrumental pieces. Long term is not the same as kind of short term. You no longer respect me. We no longer do the things that I love to do. Or you no longer allow me to do the things that I love to do. Is that something you think is correct? Bethany, can you hear us? We're having a little connection issue, so apologize about that. Did you hear us on that?
Oh, I can hear you guys.
Okay, perfect.
So I think Keith, what you were saying about the connection.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they say sometimes opposites attract, because you said that you were with your partner for 19 years.
Yeah.
And married for what, 18, 17?
No, 7. I'm going to get that wrong.
7.
I'm totally going
Okay.
to get slapped later today.
Oh, sorry. So I also have been together with my husband for 19 years now.
Right.
And we're celebrating our 18th coming up. So I wonder if, some people say, oh, well, opposites attract. And I'm wondering if that has any bearing on how people are as their relationship progresses over time. Do people get burnt out because maybe they're not finding that commonality?
Interesting.
Or is it that there's just that passion is so deep that it's
Right.
not going to ever get to that point? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I think it
That's a
really.
great question. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think really comes down to is the compatibility of how people fit together. So if it is a natural fit, even if you're opposites, then you don't really get so burnt out because it is more of a natural. I think where you get into it is where you're very much opposite and one person is really trying to pull the other person, or they weren't actually okay with them being opposites to begin with. Because some people are fine going off and doing their own thing. They don't care if their partner comes camping. They don't care if their partner goes out with them. But a lot of people genuinely do care about that. Get really honest with what feels good and what level of compatibility you're genuinely at. If the opposite attracts and it works,
Right.
that's where you're going to have success. If you're holding something back about what you genuinely want, that's where you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, because it's true. When they say opposites attract, it doesn't mean always that opposites should be attracted to each other. Let's just say that.
Right.
I mean, extroverts with introverts, I get that. I totally understand that. But sometimes if somebody really likes hunting and the other one's a vegetarian, I don't know if those two really should go together. It's like. Yeah, because then you're asking the other person to change fundamentally who they are, and versus what they are currently. You're thinking, oh, I can change them over time. And I think that's the wrong way to walk into a relationship.
Or if one is so domineering over the other one.
Yeah.
And how does the one that is more quiet and more reserved, how do they come out and let themselves be who they are? If they're always doing what the other one wants.
Right. And I think with the opposites attract, you see kind of a semblance of balance. So that's where you see working is people can kind of bring out the best qualities of each other. You know, if there's one really outgoing person and one kind of reserved, then maybe they complement each other and bring out good qualities. The outgoing person brings the introvert out of their shell. The introvert helps the extrovert, you know, come back inside a little bit. And so that's where you see it really working. And where you see it being kind of an issue is where it brings out the worst in each other. Or you have the one who's like, I'm not okay with them 5 nights a week, but they're just like, well, that's not a big deal. I'm not going to worry about it. You don't see that genuine compatibility from the opposites.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I am a different human being than when I first met my husband. I mean, we used to love going out on Tuesday nights to the bar and hanging out with our friends. And I don't think I've been into a bar in like 6 years or something like that. I mean, it's been a really long time since we've been into a bar. And the love that we had when we first met, and that intensity, that fire, that what. It's not the same. There's still an intensity to it. It's a different love, though. It is a very different love now. A longer lasting love, a more respectful love than when we were first together. And I think sometimes couples assume that fire is going to last the entire time. But you know, fire, it'll burn you if you get too close. You know.
Yes.
And I think that you've got to learn, you have to be friends first before you can do anything else. I mean, because friendship will take you much further than, you know, passion, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's actually one of the things I was going to chat about with the questions to talk to your partner about, or to kind of evaluate, is the passion versus partnership, and can you find the balance? Because actually it can go too far the other way, right? Where you see it a lot with couples that say, we feel like business partners, you know, we feel like two ships in the night. We feel like, you know, we don't feel like romantic anymore. And that's where you get affairs. That's where you get divorces. That's where you get, you know, things going very awry. So I think passion absolutely has its place, as well as partnership. So it's got to be kind of that balance, because when you see one, you know, taking over, the fiery passion isn't always sustainable, but the partnership purely without passion also isn't very sustainable. And that's what I get a lot of too, is that kind of couple coming for help of like, what do we do? Do we just divorce now, or what happens next?
Well, I feel like divorce is a lot more accessible now than it used to be too. I mean, a lot of people ask, like, how were you two together for so long? I mean, I think typically it's because they look at me and think, how the hell does he deal with me? but you know, it was a decision. Actually, it's a decision. We just made a choice never to break up. That was just a choice that we made, that no matter what, we would figure it out and we would work it out. And there have been periods in our relationship, 3, 4, 5 months, and we're not talking short periods of time. I mean, we're talking, you know, months and months, where we did not agree, that we did not get along. We never stopped loving each other, but we didn't agree on something, or we were just in different places in our life. But that's the ebb and flow of it.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
So you talk about this questionnaire. What is this questionnaire that you're talking about?
Just kind of things that couples should really talk about before they make this final decision, or even to make it a little bit less scary. Because sometimes I run into, when I work with couples pre-wedding, they're a little bit afraid that I'm going to tell them something that they don't want to hear. Like that I'm going to tell them, oh, you're
like,
not
astrologically
compatible, or whatever it is.
You need to run.
Yeah. But you'd be so surprised. People just, you know, act like I'm going to give them some terrible news. But I think it's more about, you know, being honest with what you really want out of the relationship. And that's really more what I'm trying to get at with people with the questions, is so many of these things can be worked out pre-wedding. And we have, you know, an immense amount of free will in our relationships. And I think that's where people get a little worried when they come to me for the astrology of it. They're afraid I'm going to, you know, tell them that it's not written in the stars. But what I tell them is that we have a lot more free will than we think. So can you work out these issues? Yes. Do you want to work them out, or do you want to be in a marriage like this? That's up to you. That's not something I can tell them. That's not something anybody can tell them. So for some people, they're maybe okay with getting less out of the relationship. They'd rather the partnership versus the passion, and they're genuinely okay with that. It's
Right.
really the questionnaire, I guess, I get out with people is authentically, what is it that you want out of this relationship? And that's what I want to help them achieve. So it's not, like a test of, yes, you're compatible, no, you're not. We all have different degrees of compatibility, but are you okay with this level that you and your partner are naturally at?
What are the telltale signs that you think, what is like a big, like, obviously if you're a Tina Turner moment, then definitely you do not say I do. But there are other like kind of moments that, and I think you hit on this. It's like, what are you going to be able to deal with? What are you comfortable with in your
Mhm.
relationship? Because sometimes it is much more of a business relationship, and that is their love. That is what works for them. And others, it's play dates with a third or a fourth, and that is their
Right.
kind of world. It's different. I'm assuming it's different for everybody.
Well, because everybody's set point is different.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
is that true? It's different for everybody.
Yeah, I would say it is different for everybody and what they
So
kind of expect out of it.
and so it is really just when you meet with a couple, it's really just you're feeling your way through their emotions and kind of reading how they're both reacting to the questions more than how they're
Yes.
answering the questions themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can tell, when someone's saying like, "Oh, well, he doesn't do this, but it's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. I don't worry about it." And it's like, okay, you do though. Like it's okay, but like you do. And you're kind of reading between the lines of, or even just things that don't seem maybe like a big deal. This is the time to kind of catch them before they become a big deal because again, you're talking about for the rest of your life. This is what you're agreeing to. So are you genuinely okay with this for the rest of your life? Even if you're saying like, well, it doesn't bother me that much right now. Okay,
What do
but
you
if
think
they do
about
this exact thing for 10 years, in 10 years, are you going to have that same reaction?
right? And so, what do you think about people pulling credit reports? Yes? No?
Um, I mean, I think being really upfront and honest about the finances is huge for sure.
Right.
And especially if they feel like there's maybe something someone's not being honest about. But again, if you're really at that point of distrust, like, are you sure you guys are married? But yeah, I think being extremely upfront is going to be what you really want to do. So I think you should maybe have your credit reports pulled up and your bank accounts and really take that genuine that. I think that's a great tool and exercise for people.
Really?
Yeah.
That goes against all the world of like written love stories, is like pull out your bank account. I mean, that's like the horror story that everybody thinks about. Is like, oh, she only loves me because of my bank account. And it's like, well, maybe that's true. But you're saying not a horrible thing that you talk about money before the big I do.
No, I think it's great because I think a lot of where you see like these instant divorces is because once you've made that commitment, people begin to feel extremely trapped in something. And so if you spring them, then they're like, oh, you tricked me into this, or I feel really blindsided, or now I'm stuck with you and your credit problems. Like, whereas if you're upfront about it, truthful before you go into it, then maybe they won't panic and you can kind of work on a plan. And I am big into
Wow.
the astrology, but I'm also very big into the grounding it into earth and being very upfront of financials can make or break marriages, not just because of the financial itself, but hiding of it, the discrepancies, feeling lied to. Those are the kinds of resentments that really take hold and topple relationships. So yeah, I'm all about like, let's get real, let's get
Wow.
down to earth, let's look at each other's finances and yeah, and make
Because then you're being
so
honest. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
then you're being
you're
honest.
laying all your cards on the table.
that's
Let me
like,
ask you a question.
wow.
So like
Go
I
ahead.
know I can say, and I'm sure Keith can probably agree too.
Mhm.
We've met couples over the years, and you sit down with them and you're talking about the plans for the wedding, and you kind of get a read on them that you just don't think this is going to be the long lasting one.
Yes, I'm
And
so
yeah,
glad you brought this up.
and you kind of wonder, are we going to even get to the day? So the
Yeah.
question is, like, as people who, I mean, although my background was in psychology and sociology, not everybody's is, and it's also out of my niche of what my scope of my business is. So I would not want to, like, obviously take that on. You know, we're not the professionals. How do we kind of steer them into the direction of, you know, I think it would be a great idea to speak with somebody without having that, without being so forward about it, you know, like in a very, like, you know, laid
Great
back kind of
question.
way. Like, I really think that, like, some people just walk in and, you know, from the get-go, this is not going to work.
Great
And
question.
then there are other couples
Yeah.
that walk in and you're like, this is a match made in heaven. You can just, you feel it, you see it, you know it.
Yeah,
How
but
do
that
you-
is a great question.
Where do
how
you
yeah,
do?
how do you urge somebody to go seek counseling when they don't know they need it themselves?
I think for people in the industry, it's actually easier than you think, because you could really easily phrase it as like, you know, this is just a really stressful time for couples, and I recommend all my couples to get some assistance during this time, or, you know, whatever it is. My sessions that are specifically around soonly weds, I call them set up for success. And that could be a really easy way to say, like, oh, this is part of our event package, or, you know, we just always like refer you to this person, or that way it kind of makes it seem a little bit less like, wow, you guys need help, and more like, oh, everybody does this. It's like premarital counseling. It's so easy. Like, you know, it's just a lot more laid back. If you think it's like a really serious issue, you know, you could also just kind of have somebody at the ready. Like, you could have levels of, like, you know,
That's funny.
Like, have you spoken to a clergy?
this is my
you know, are
friend
you
who's a
all set?
therapist, and she specializes. Yeah, just really, I mean, I think the less, you know, you could make it kind of, I don't know, like, I try to make mine sound kind of like, they've got a little cachet, like, oh, you can get your astrology done, and it's like all the celebrities do it, which is true, right? Like, they do, but you can just make it sound a lot more upbeat, and like, oh, you've got these major issues. I don't think you should get married. And, you know, and it's true, like, anyone who is, yeah.
I mean, I have.
But
I've
anyone
actually told a bride. I said, "You're getting married for the party. You're not getting married to get married. You're getting married for the party, and you need to be really careful, because I think in 6 months we're going to be talking about a cancellation issue, and you're signing this contract by yourself because he doesn't want to sign it with you. Big red flag. You two need to really talk about that." And she's like, no, that's not true. Blah, blah, blah. Signed away. And guess what? 6 months later, she lost 10 grand because she lost her deposit. And it's like, I warned her. I mean, and that's once. I mean, I've only had to do that once in the 20 plus years I've been doing this. So it was obvious. I mean,
yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, like, none of us are miracle workers. Like, we can't sew together something that's falling apart. We can't force someone, you know, at the end of the day, this is their free will, their decision. So, I mean, we can only do what we can do. You can recommend them to go to these sessions. You could say, you know, but at the end of the day, our responsibility is actually pretty limited of, you know, it's not on us. We're not making this decision for them. This is their thing.
Thank God. Well, you know, and I mean, because we all in the industry have horror stories of people leaving before they say I do. I mean, we've had runaway brides, we've had runaway grooms, we've had people. I mean, the industry is full of stories of this. I mean, and if you've been in this business long enough,
you run into somebody and you think they're still married to the same couple, you know, the same person that they married when you did their wedding. And you come to find out they were the totally second person, you know, and they didn't come back to you because they were so embarrassed.
I never assume people are married.
Oh, I would never assume.
Never assume that people. I'm like, hey, how's it going?
How are things going?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very.
that's a
No,
good
never
safe
assume.
question. I'm like, that's fine. Yeah.
So how does this like tie into the idea of apologies I never received? You know, the apologies I never got, because you talked about the past hurts affecting your current relationship, right? And that many times you can write your own apology that somebody should owes you, right? And so how does that come
Yeah.
into planning for a future relationship, a future marriage? You know, are there some some reoccurring themes of hurt that people have had that you see more and more often? Because you mentioned something earlier. You said, oh, he cheated on me before. I've been cheated on before, so I just assume everybody cheats. But that's not really true.
No, and that's a really good way to tank your future relationships, because then you start holding your new partner accountable for your past partner's mistakes.
Right.
And yeah, so that's a big one. And that's part of what I do in my sessions is I actually go through the 3-step apology process with them, whether it's individually or if, sometimes you have couples that have their own resentments of each other, like, oh, well, when we were in college, he cheated on me. And it's actually within that relationship. So you have that, or even if it's just the same fight that they have over and over. I mean, people can have these little hidden resentments about all kinds of things. So I actually use my apology process in sessions with the couples on past things of their own relationship or past things that I'm seeing are affecting the current relationship.
And you said it's a 3-step apology process. What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's basically you start with validation. And so it's going through and having someone write out all the emotions they felt around the incident or the fight or whatever it is. It's either them writing this themselves, or the partner can also provide an apology as well. But it's mainly about getting the closure. So it would be kind of saying like whatever the apology is. So if you felt abandoned, then it's saying, sorry you felt abandoned. I'm sorry you felt sad. I'm sorry you felt traumatized. And just going through kind of every emotion. There's no filter. Whatever you're doing it, that's what you're going to apologize for and write yourself. And then I do the acknowledgement piece, which is, a lot of times there's like, well, I was a good girlfriend. I can't believe you cheated on me. I didn't deserve that. It's like, yeah, you're right. No one deserves to be cheated on. No one deserves to be lied to. Or even if at the base, like, you're right, it was a painful experience for you. So that's the acknowledgement piece where they're saying, I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry it was so painful. I'm sorry you didn't deserve it. But all of that is self-directed compassion. And then you have
can't that get a little tricky though? It's like, I'm sorry you feel bad. I mean, you can get very pissy with how you say it. I'm so sorry you felt abandoned. Not that you were, but I'm sorry you felt it. I mean, there's
yeah,
it's kind of like
that's the rule. Like, you really have to set it up. You really have to set it up, because mainly I do it individually. And if it is a situation between the two of them, like where someone did get cheated on in college, then I really set it up of like, we're not filtering this. This is an emotional experience. So you can't really fight with someone about that. It's like, this is how they experienced it, whether you perceived it that way or not. So this is experiential based. It's not factual. It's not logical. It's purely emotional. That's all we're getting at with it. So that kind of takes the pace off of arguing or being like, oh yeah, I'm really sorry about that. It's like, if you're not in a space to actually hear what your partner is saying, then we're not going to do this together. We're going to do it.
Oh my God. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, because that's Brooke Logan Stoner. Hello.
Hi.
I told you, she's like Kramer. She'll just slide in the middle of it. And I know she's been listening to this and been itching to get on, because we've been talking about some things I know she's been focused on.
I just kept counting to her lashes. So she started talking finances. I was like, oh, here I
come. But, obviously it takes more than one session, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Bethany, right? Okay, because I was about to say that you can't just get over some of this stuff right away. But then there's the lighter hearted side of this. And I think that humor is a great healing aspect, which is why I want to talk about your Instagram a little bit, because your Instagram is fabulous. I mean, oh my God, the apologies I never get. I'm sorry I accidentally texted you about how bad our date was. I'm sorry I made out with my ex at a Halloween party. What? I'm sorry I compared pictures of you to my ex on our first date. Are these real?
These are 100% real. These are very real. Yes, they are. A lot of them happen to people I know directly. I do take submissions from just kind of the general, but that's always my thing, is like, this has got to be real. And half the time I don't even need submissions because everyone's got these stories. I have so many friends that,
awesome.
that I love this one. I said I was 22 when I was actually 42.
Show pictures of the ex. What's that?
Oh, that one reaching.
I said I was 22 when I was actually 42.
Oh, yeah.
That's so genuine. I mean, we've all been there.
We've all been there. Maybe not that big of an age gap, but
not maybe that big, right? But
yeah, that's a big one, even for the.
Let's try starting with 10 instead of just like slapping 20 around like that. That's.
I mean, come on. I am sorry I cried on our first date. Oh, that's so me. I did. I totally cried on my first date. I swear to God. I totally cried on my first date. And luckily it wasn't right after sex, thank God, because that would have been
I was going to say there actually was one that was a sex one that they cried after having sex for the first time, but I was like, I don't know if I want to add that one. I'm like unsure, but if it's relatable, I might go ahead and do it.
Keith, wasn't your first date like you both tell each other why you guys should not be together? And
100%. Oh yeah, our first date. Oh my God, we had such a good time, and we obviously clicked on all sorts of levels, and we did the worst thing you possibly could do, which was go home and have sex after your first date. And afterwards, we're like, you do not want to date me because such and such, because I am not in a place for it. I just moved here. I'm just not in the, I'm not an adult enough. Blah 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 blah. I mean, like a list.
Followed by, how do you want your ex, babe?
Yes. And how do you want like your eggs, babe? And I mean, it really was. We told each other the absolute worst things about ourselves. And I think that's actually why it worked. Wow. To be honest, because we kind of like put that bar really low.
I mean, you just put it all out there. It's like you're in or you're out.
I mean, that's what we did. We totally put it out there. It's like, look, this is who I am, and this is all the real raw dog kind of stuff behind the scenes, and you either take it or you leave it. And
yeah.
I feel like you both clearly wanted that challenge. You're like, I'm up for this challenge.
I can do that.
Roll the dice.
Well, Bethany, that's actually a really good question. Do you find that there are some people out there that like a fixer-upper and that think that they're going to find this person and that they see a diamond in the rough, so to speak, but don't realize that diamond in the rough is always going to be a diamond in the rough? You can't fix a diamond in the rough. There's no such thing as fixing. But do you find people fall into that trap?
Oh yeah. The wounded healer kind of archetype.
Ooh, wounded healer. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of that. And that's where you get into a lot of like, oh, it won't be this bad forever. It's like, no,
right. You're like, yes, it will. It will totally be this bad.
Or they'll put the brakes on even though they know that it is the right person.
Oh yeah, what about that? Mm-hmm. What about people that put on the brakes and you're like, what are you doing? Why are you putting on the brakes? You two are obviously made for each other.
Yeah, that one usually that usually comes down to attachment theory, where you have kind of an avoidant attachment where they just really don't trust the person because they don't trust love, they don't trust, whether their family dynamic was a certain way of
right.
They learned that they couldn't trust people, or even to the extent that love is painful, right? If you love a parent and they don't treat you well, now you've ingrained, this is what love feels like. This is something I don't want. So that's really, when I see kind of that, I'm like, let's talk about your childhood. Let's talk about
like, oh my God, that's very, got a little Sybil thing going on there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, so what do you do in those circumstances? What if you find that you're in the middle of the planning process? You find somebody like me, you find somebody like Marcy that says, "Hey, by the way, a lot of my couples are really stressed and they should go to a counselor." And then they do go to the counselor and they find, "Whoa, crap, we shouldn't be together." And now we got to cancel the wedding. I mean, because that does add a whole nother level of stress, because then you're not just talking about the couple, you're talking about parents, you're talking about finances, you're talking about money.
Hope you didn't spend that retainer, darling.
But
Yeah,
do you tell
once the
people,
guests
like,
are already showing up, they've already paid for their plane tickets and all of that.
I mean, do you tell people it's like, look, it's worth not being in a lifetime of pain for the shorter period of pain?
Yeah, or sending all the presents back because you've gotten divorced, a month later. Or there was one person I knew who actually ended up sleeping with the caterer and ended up divorcing and marrying the caterer. And that's like, I mean, the wedding happened, right? Like the wedding happened, but this was the person she got with. And so it's like, I mean, that's obviously a very extreme example, but it's
I know one.
Wait. Are you saying that the wedding still went on, but with a different person?
No. She had her wedding to one man and got with the caterer from that wedding and ended up divorcing him and marrying the caterer. So there were two weddings.
Okay,
and
the two
trick
weddings.
was the first wedding was enormously extravagant. Like the bridesmaids had literal like Cinderella ball gowns. Like the whole thing had to have cost, close to $1 million, if not more. Yeah. And so it's which scenario would you prefer? Whole. I mean, everyone knew that's like, when they see the new wedding invitations of the next wedding, you're like, that name looks familiar. Like, oh,
that must have been some damn good lobster thermidor, honey.
I know.
I actually had a bride. I actually had a bride that had that wedding, and she had the most amazing photo, and it's a local photographer that did her photo, and they made her look amazing. So I had her photo up on my wall, and she actually ended up having to get divorced because she got pregnant by her chiropractor. And I was like, what? I'm like, okay, that's a different kind of stretching. I don't understand that. Okay.
I do know of a caterer that actually wound up marrying her client after his initial wedding. And it's just like, I mean, it does happen.
It does happen. Well, because life is messy.
It does happen. And that's the thing that do happen.
Such a real left turn, real fast and hard.
Yeah. But but that's because life. But that's because life is messy. Love doesn't follow the world as we supposedly know it. I mean, love doesn't have the same rules around it that we would like them to have. Sometimes it is messy. Sometimes it happens out of the most random places. But how do you know that that's the real thing? And that was actually a question, Bethany. I know, everybody got real quiet. Everybody got real quiet right there.
Yeah.
But how do you know?
It was like I didn't know if it was rhetorical or. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, but isn't that the big question, though? It's like, how do you know it's real? But is there, is it a tingly? Is it like,
that's the big question. And that's the thing that none of them, they have to decide it.
Wow. That's a big gamble. That is a big gamble.
It really just comes down to, it is. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so there's just really, and so what you're saying is that there's really just no for sure's in this world. There just isn't.
There's not, because you can have people who on paper look amazing, who astrologically look amazing, who you're sitting across from them and you're like, wow, this connection is so great. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's on them. It's their decision. At the end of the day, they might prefer the caterer. That's
funny.
not anything we can all control or predict particularly.
All right, so now I'm going to get into the astrology portion of it, because I'm really fascinated with this particular part of your because everything that you've said so far makes total sense. I look at you and I think, yes, I get it, I hear it, it makes total sense. How does the astrology part come into how you talk to your clients? Because I think of astrology as terms that give me an ability to connect to something that I don't really understand, right? And so it gives my brain something to be able to go, okay, yeah, I get that. Okay, Libra, it has these kind of things to it. Okay, I understand that. It doesn't. Does that make sense? Like it gives me definition on something that is typically undefinable. Is what
Yeah,
I'm trying to say.
absolutely.
Is that
Yeah,
how
definitely.
you
It goes into
approach
really,
it?
yeah. And I mean, with different couples, I tweak the language. Sometimes I have to take out the exact astrology wording because maybe they're not comfortable with it. But I mean, the concepts and the archetypes are still there.
Right.
So a lot of the ways it shows up is communication. That's really where I can use it. I feel like I use it the most is how they communicate with each other and just kind of their general energy levels and different things. Because once you take out kind of the blame of like, you communicate wrong, I communicate correctly. And it's just like, no, it's just different. Like you're a Libra. This is your kind of avoidance, what you do. It's how you communicate. This is an Aries. They're very direct. Like nobody's right, nobody's wrong. This is just how you communicate. And then it's like, oh, okay. And it just takes out this stigma and this blame. And it's just kind of working with our own natural tendencies. And so
Ooh,
even if you take the astrology terms out, right? Like even if I say,
I love
I
that.
take Libra out and I just say, you're a more communicator. You tend to avoid conflict. They're like, yeah, I do. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly
I
what a Libra is, but it's fine. Like, we'll just use different terminology. Like,
But I
yeah. So
love that
it's
because it
kind
really
of
does
more,
take the stigma out of it. It takes the total stigma out of it. You're not telling somebody you don't know how to communicate or you communicate to directly. You're saying, you're an Aries. Of course you communicate directly. And of course, and then people go, oh, that's
yeah,
it. Oh, I get that. I totally get that. I love that takes away some of the pressure, so to speak, of you're doing it wrong. I'm doing it right.
right. Yeah. And then it gives you tools to kind of, because Aries can tend to be, for example, more fiery in their communication. So you're like, yeah, this is your tendency, but this is how you learn to dial it back, or this is how you learn to use it for you instead of against you, or like, your partner doesn't, accept your communication that way. So when you're trying to conflict, resolve, then this is a better way to kind of communicate with them. So it takes the stigma out, but it also gives you tools of how to work with that very specific energy that you're maybe presenting so that you can have a good relationship. So it's not you're wrong, I'm right, or oh, it's an Aries, so you don't have to worry about it. It's kind of a mix of like, yeah, it's okay that you're fiery, that's your nature, but we don't
Right.
want to burn the house down. We want to learn how to utilize this nature in a way that's beneficial to you and your relationship.
Brooke's like, where's the match?
Match. I'm like, close,
Yeah.
shade, torch,
Torch.
gas can, like
Me too, bro.
amateur.
Me too.
Oh, that's funny. That is so funny.
I get the job done. Trust me. I ain't
You
got
know,
time for that little match.
right? I don't really, but the overall, I don't really understand astrology. I mean, I understand the basic concepts. Everybody understands, like, oh, I'm a Libra, or I'm a Scorpio, or I'm on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio, because that's actually I am, because October 21st. But I mean, do you
Mhm.
find that these qualities tend to be follow people that are those signs? Like, do you find that Libras actually do have similar qualities to each other?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to the chart. So you look at, their three top, which is their sun, moon, rising. You look at their Mercury, which is their communication. You look at their Venus, which is their relationship. And there's different aspects of how they can present. But when you figure out what energy they're kind of leading with, then yeah, they absolutely fall into that. And you can
Really?
see a lot of it. And a lot of the times I can intuitively look up on, oh yeah, this person's got a water moon. I'm not sure which moon it is, but you've got some watery energy. That's kind of
Well,
where you see them communicate that way, I guess.
Right. So I mean, I'm going to throw something random out because I'm also a science geek, and so supposedly the stars that we're looking at, those stars no longer exist in from their beginnings. How is that then pulled into your astrology chart? Is it brought
Good
into it at
question.
all? At the idea that that the stars that we are actually looking at no longer exist in this specific time and space? I know that's a random question.
Sorry, you cut out
That's a great question.
what was it? You cut out a little.
Oh, so the idea that the stars that we're looking at actually do not exist currently. We're just looking at their light that has been shined at us. But if you go to that actual star, that star no longer exists currently. So how does astrology pull in some of that thought process? How does it combine a little bit of the science piece with it, with the astrology piece, or does it?
So like the light, you're saying that the light has some kind of like a
Sorry, you're
memory
cutting out again.
there.
Yeah, so the thing is that when you look up in the stars right now, what we're seeing is from 3 trillion years ago, but that star is no longer actually there. And so that's what they say when they're looking at the telescope, and they said that we're looking back 3 billion years or 3 trillion years. It's because you're only seeing the light of it, but the actual item that produced the light in the first place no longer exists. It's gone. Isn't that crazy? So, I always wonder, like, how does astrology kind of account for some of that?
That is crazy.
Or does it actually make sense because, we're all born out of the Big Bang. And so that light is always going to be a part of who we are, fundamentally. Did I just get all
absolutely.
weird? I think I got all
So
sciencey.
it's kind of like an evolution that just doesn't go. It just
Yeah.
stays
Right.
stagnant.
Yeah.
But so one day, so Marcy, let's think about it this way. One day you're going to look up at the star, at the North Star, and it's no longer going to be there. What you see as the North Star may not be in millions of years. It'll be millions and millions of years past, way when probably
We will be.
Earth is dead itself. But the light that is the North Star will no longer be there because the star that originally produced that light is no longer in existence. Isn't that crazy? I mean, I think about that. And
that's really cool.
Yeah,
Actually,
check that out. I know we just went totally on the left field.
Totally.
Let's go back to relationships, because now I'm looking at the stars with my lover, and I'm like, oh, you're not Jacob. Anyway.
Look at Brooke's face. She's speechless.
Oops, scans, cracks. What? Something. Wow. I'm gonna have my water.
Well, what about you personally, Bethany? How does this work into your personal life? Do you find that people say, well, if you're giving other people advice, how are you, putting it into your own life? Because I can plan a wedding, but do not ask me to get married, kind of thing. It's like, oh my God, do as I say, don't do as I do, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do get asked that a lot. And I think really I'm very authentic. Like the horse I ride in on is like I have a lot of this knowledge about it from experience as well. And I'm very authentic of like I have things that I work on. I've had good relationships. I've had absolutely horrendous ones. And this is stuff that, when I'm working with a couple, I'm not emotionally engaged in their outcome. So I have a much different perspective on it than with my own relationships or my own childhood or my own traumas. I mean, those are things that, we all have to work through individually. And so I'm very authentic about the things I work on. I'm very authentic with clients and I think that's how you can tell a really good healer or a good psychic or a good whatever is if they're able to tell you, I'm a human and this is what I struggle with and this is what I work to overcome. And just being really authentic with that, because I think when you have the people who say, oh, my husband and I don't have any problems or I don't have any issues or, you're like, then have you gone through anything? Like, I don't trust you. It's like the best addiction counselors are the ones who've been addicts. I feel like that's kind of a lot of the industry is like, I'm good at what I do because I've been there. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to look at you I mean, I worked in social services before I did this. Like, nothing you say to me is going to shake me on any level. And so I feel like I can really get at people's problems because they feel safe. They feel like they can trust me. Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, that's so horrible that you think that about your husband. It's
right.
It's like, no, I get it. I've had those thoughts too, haven't we all? Like, it's okay. Let's just dig into them. And I don't know. That's, I guess, like my,
But I didn't cut my grandmother up, so I don't know.
And relationships take work, and I think sometimes people are so, in this day and age, are so willing to just like, okay, it's not working, I'm out. And you're always gonna, no matter whatever the relationship is, you're always gonna have ups and downs. It's getting through it together and finding a way to make things, move forward.
So let's talk about the real elephant in the room. What do we do about people that don't write thank you notes? And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to us, that is Marcy's big pet peeve. It's like, why did you not write a thank you note? I brought you a gift to your bar mitzvah. You should have written me a thank you note.
Or wedding.
You should write them
I think that,
and then mail it.
That's right. See? I mean, come on.
I mean, parents need to understand that
how it's done and then mail it to them.
That's funny.
I think that parents give their kids a pass because they want their kid to just, enjoy life.
Yeah.
But part of growing up is about and having relationships with people is about, finding that commonality of being respectful to another person, another human.
I agree. We're going to have to go through the 3-step apology process with you in order to get you over this.
Just be a decent human being.
Oh my God. So
Bethany,
Bethany, you've been amazing. If somebody wants to get in touch with you via social media, how would they do that? How do they go about finding you?
Yeah, so I have the Apologies I Never Got Instagram, which is just those. It's just the apologies. And then I have my own, which has more about like my sessions and the astrology and all the other things. And that's at Bethany Nicole Love. And then my website has everything combined too, and that's just bethanynicole.com.
And by the way, if you're watching our YouTube show, you'll see it on the ticker tape below. You got to go check her Instagram account. You got to go check this. I mean,
it is very funny.
It is very funny. Apologies I Never Got. It will make you feel like you're connected to every other individual out there because you're like, damn it, that's right. I never got that damn apology. And somebody else actually had it happen to them. So again, Bethany, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for being on the show. We're so happy and so thankful that you're here. And luckily we will not have to apologize for this. Or maybe we will. I don't know.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you, the always gorgeous Brooke Logan Stoner, and my co-host Marcy with an Affair to Remember by Marcy. I'm your host, Keith Willard. We will see you next Tuesday at 2:00. But for now, everybody say goodbye.
Bye.